She thought it was just another quiet afternoon in her own neighborhood. But then men dressed like HOA cops showed up at her doormen who weren't what they claimed to be. Within moments, their fake authority turned into something far darker, something no woman should ever face. They didn't just cross a line, they shattered it. And what they didn't know was that her husband, the man they were about to provoke, was no ordinary husband. He was a Navy SEAL. What happened next would shock the entire community. For Marcus and his wife, life in the neighborhood was supposed to feel safe. They had worked hard for everything: long hours, endless sacrifices, and the dream of finally owning a home where they could breathe easy. Marcus, a decorated Navy SEAL, carried himself with quiet strength, but at home, he was simply a husband who wanted peace for his family. His wife cherished the simple routines: morning coffee on the porch, evening walks under the fading sun, laughter echoing inside the walls they built together. But beneath that calm surface, there were cracks. The Homeowners Association had been a constant thorn, always watching, always judging. For some, Marcus's success didn't erase the fact that he was a Black man in a predominantly white neighborhood. Whispers turned into stares, and stares into subtle harassment. Still, Marcus brushed it off, believing discipline and resilience could weather anything. What they didn't know was that a storm was already brewing. Strangers were circling closer, watching with intentions far from ordinary. Soon, the line between neighborly disputes and outright danger would be crossed, and the couple's quiet life would explode into chaos. The trouble began quietly, the way a storm always does first, as a shadow on the horizon. At first, it was petty complaints. His grass was too long. His trash bins were too visible. His wife's music on the porch was too loud. All of it, little rules bent into weapons, wielded by neighbors who wanted them to feel out of place. Marcus brushed it off, telling his wife not to waste energy on small-minded people. But the truth was harder to ignore. Every knock on the door, every letter slipped into their mailbox carried a different message. "You don't belong here, Dot." And then came the night when things escalated. A knock, louder this time, like a demand. When his wife answered, two men stood there in what looked like security uniforms. Their badges gleamed under the porch light, their posture stiff with authority. HOA enforcement, they called themselves. But something about them felt wrong. Their eyes carried no professionalism, just hostility. They accused her of breaking rules she'd never heard of, demanded she step outside to answer for it. When she refused, one of them smirked, muttering words laced with venom. She tried to close the door, but that's when it happened. One of the men shoved the door back and struck her across the face. Marcus wasn't home, but his wife's scream ripped through the night, echoing across the quiet street. Lights flicked on end, neighboring houses, but no one came. Curtains moved, then stilled. People were watching, but not one stepped forward. That silence cut deeper than the slap itself. By the time Marcus pulled into the driveway minutes later, his training kicked in before his brain could catch up. He saw his wife trembling, her hand pressed to her cheek, and the two imposters still. On the porch, puffed up like predators circling prey. They didn't back down when he arrived. Instead, one stepped forward, puffing out his chest, daring him to do something. Marcus knew in that moment this was no misunderstanding. It wasn't about HOA rules or even authority. It was about control, about putting his family in their place. and the men standing before him had no idea who they were challenging. They are thickened. Every instinct Marcus had from years of combat screamed at him to move, but he held back, waiting, calculating, measuring every angle. He wasn't just a husband now. He was a protector, standing between his wife and men who thought their power was absolute. The neighborhood watched through glass, silent as statues. And Marcus realized this wasn't just about him. It was about every silent judgment, every whisper, every rule twisted into chains. These men had lit a fuse, and the explosion was about to come. Marcus stood still, his chest heaving, his eyes locked on the men who had dared to lay hands on his wife. The imposters didn't back away. Instead, one sneered, calling him a boy, spitting the word like poison. That single word loaded with centuries of hate ignited something inside him in an instant. The quiet strength Marcus had always carried erupted into raw, unstoppable force. The first man lunged, but Marcus moved faster, training and instinct blending into precision. His hand deflected the strike, his fist finding its target with the weight of years of discipline and rage. The man collapsed, gasping for breath. The smug arrogance ripped away in a heartbeat. The second attacker tried to grab Marcus's wife, dragging her toward the steps. That was the breaking point. Marcus surged forward, every step echoing like thunder. He tore the man's grip away, planting himself between his wife and danger, and with a strike sharp and unrelenting, he ended the confrontation. Both imposters lay broken on the ground, groaning, their fake authority shattered. The neighborhood was no longer silent. Phones were out, cameras recording, eyes wide with the realization of what they had just witnessed. Yet not one neighbor had intervened when his wife was struck. Not one had spoken up until violence was answered with violence. Marcus stood tall, his wife trembling behind him, and the world around them seemed to slow. This wasn't just a fight on his front porch. It was a declaration, a message that his family would never be powerless. But as sirens began to scream in the distance, one question burned in the air. Would justice finally stand on their side, or would the system twist this night into something it was never meant to be? When the sirens grew louder and flashing lights painted the street, Marcus didn't flinch. He stood there, his wife by his side, while the two imposters lay groaning on the ground. The officers who stepped out of the patrol cars scanned the scene with suspicion guns close to their holsters, eyes darting between the broken men and the black man standing tall before them. For a moment, it felt like history repeating itself, the victims standing in danger of being mistaken for the threat. But then the truth came out. The uniforms were fake, the badges were counterfeit, and the neighbors, the same ones who had watched in silence before, now suddenly found their voices pointing fingers, showing video proof, confirming who had really started the violence. Marcus and his wife were cleared that night, but the scars went deeper than any headline could capture. Because what haunted them wasn't just the assault, it was the silence before it. The way a whole street had watched injustice unfold and chose comfort over courage, and that silence speaks louder than any slap or punch ever could. This story is more than one family's fight. It's a reflection of a reality countless Black families face, being targeted, disrespected, doubted, and left to defend themselves in a world that still questions their right to safety. So, what do we take from this? That strength is not just in fists or in titles, but in standing against what's wrong, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's risky. Because racism doesn't just live in the men who throw the punches. It lives in the neighbors who close the blinds. The question is, the next time injustice knocks on your street, will you stay silent or will you stand?